Afternoon, everyone. Sort of my second video analysing a match from Rosslyn Park Sevens. This time it's the under 16s cup semi-final between sort of two powerhouses of English schoolboy rugby in Harrow and Sedbergh. Going into this, I checked. I think Harrow only lost one game in a sevens tournament all season, and Sedbergh had lost none and had previously won the Warwick School Sevens. So it's going to be an interesting match, and just take you through some things. So the first bit of play is right here. So if we go back, Sedbergh have got it from a ruck, choose to challenge the gain line, good tackle, a two-man tackle initially, with this lad here as sort of the secondary tackler who does really well in the jackal. Releases quickly. There you go, big release, and it's amazing technique. He's just going to swing this left leg over to make it almost seem like he's gone through the gate, that he's come all the way back. He just swings it round and he's straight on the ball there. And this is what I was talking about in my video yesterday. He hasn't just got his arms on it. He hasn't just got his hands on it. You can see like his forearm would be there and the other forearm there, wrapped on the ball. Immediately lower. That means his height is immediately lower than if he just had his hands on it, because his arms aren't as extended as far. And he's had a good wide base. Here. Oh, good wide base. Strong over the ball, and you'll see they can't clear him out. 4 goes a tiny bit too high. So we'll watch it again. 4 in too high. Watch it again. There you go. Let's go back again. Swing the leg round over. 4's coming in. 4 should probably be a bit lower right now. Drops too low here. Doesn't give himself enough space to get underneath him. And 4 should be targeting that tiny gap in there. Should get his shoulder underneath there, get his arms through him and just take him out. But as you see, the Harrow man lowers right before 4 comes in, and 4 just tries to take him out with brute strength, where maybe a sort of a croc roll, judo roll would have done the job here. But whichever way you look at it, I think Harrow would probably get that penalty because it's great jackal technique. A minute and 5 seconds in now, and I just want to have a look, and everyone to have a look at this Harrow defence here. Everyone playing soft, no one rushing out. Good tackle there, positive tackle. Again, ice the ruck, no one in. Soft again, but always pushing up, always pushing up. They're not blitzing up, but they're soft and pushing up. And they're just slowly going to restrict Sedbergh's space throughout this whole passage. Now, there's something I want you to also look at Harrow here, and what is quite prominent throughout the match is they tend to work in 3s in defence. So 1, 2, 3. And they'll work across the field in 3s, and when it comes back this way, they'll work in 3s. And this man here is not, the gap here is bigger, you see, but he doesn't need to be as close because Sedbergh aren't close to targeting this gap here yet. But just something to keep in mind throughout the game. So Harrow working in 3s, still look, not even committing there. Just standing off him, just slowly restricting the space. Good tackle there. Again, positive tackle, driving him back up, ice the ruck. Restricting the space again, and look where Sedbergh are now. They started off around here, and now they're back on their own try line. All from Harrow doing soft defence, pushing up. Soft defence, but pushing up at the same time, and just driving them back. Positive tackles as well really helped. Same thing going. Sedbergh still trying to pass it out. Nearly get held up for a maul here. Still great defence from Harrow. Still not committing at the rucks. They know they've got them under pressure. And here we go. Sedbergh are behind their own line, realise they need to run it out, can't keep passing it. Harrow comes in with his left arm here and strips it out. A knock on. Harrow come in, it's a simple 2-on-1, and he finishes in the corner. Now, if we go back here, I don't know why, we'll go back a few phases. I don't know why Sedbergh, they never seemed to trouble the gain line or wanted to trouble the gain line. They just kept passing it, going backwards, losing gaps, like a loop there, pass. Could have troubled the gain line, but fends off and goes backwards, falls over. Could have troubled the gain line here. All Sedbergh needed to do here, and I think something they lacked throughout the whole match, was really just, when nothing's on, just try and punch a hole into the defence, through the defensive line, and see if you can break that way and then get an offload off when the defence is in sort of disarray. But they just kept throwing it backwards, jinking around doing goose steps until they ended up on their own try line, losing the ball, and ended up conceding the try. Here's going to be another example of Harrow working in their threes again, and the inside man working really hard. So once Sedbergh start going off this way, you'll notice 3 players here. 1, 2, 3. And the key here is this inside man here will keep working all the way across the field. Here he goes. He'll keep working, all 3 of them. Sedbergh out wide now, so he can push in. He has no one else to mark, so he can go for the tackle. He's too flat to receive an offload. And Harrow, the 3 men are still there. He does break the tackle, but because the 3 men are so narrow and tight, with the sweeper in behind, there's nowhere to go. So it's just, and he eventually gets put into touch. So it's just another great, if we go back here, just another great example of Harrow working really hard to stay connected and not leave any gaps in the defensive line. See, 1, 2, 3, all there. So good play by Harrow there. Now, speaking earlier about when you're in trouble on your own line, you've got to try and punch a hole in your line, in the defensive line. But you can do that at any point during the Sevens game. Obviously, most of the time, because of the reduced numbers, it's a one-on-one tackle. And we'll watch it here from Harrow, where they score their first try. So it comes out wide. They're sort of stuck here. Sedbergh have good defensive numbers, 3-on-3. You think, what's the point in passing it? We're gonna intrude upon our space. Just take it to the line, set up a ruck, and recycle and try and find more space. So he comes in, steps off his right, runs at the inside shoulder, the weak inside shoulder. This player here, Sedbergh, only manages to get an arms tackle in. 5 comes in, no one actually takes his legs. And it's really key here because the Harrow player has really good leg drive. Just keeps pumping those legs, keeps pumping. And so much so, he's pumping them so hard that Sedbergh player gets a hand on his back, on his shirt. He pumps so hard he rips the shirt. And that's just a great try. That's just pure effort from the Harrow player. And obviously Sedbergh's tackling technique could be better, but again, it just shows the importance of when you've got one-on-one tackles in games, like in Sevens tournaments, don't be afraid to just run it if you've got nothing else on and try and break a tackle, and paid off there for Harrow. So Harrow back on the attack here, and I wanted to pick this up because I think it's good defence from Sedbergh, and I also think it's just a little thing, but it's good defence from Sedbergh, and I think it's nice from Harrow, and the Sedbergh player reacted well to it. So you'll see the first receiver here is going to get the ball, and this player here is going to come short, and but he realises when when this Sedbergh player gets across that the short line's not on because he'll have tackled him. So he removes the short line or doesn't run the short line and ends up coming back out. So the Sedbergh player has to come in and then out, and he reacts really well to it, and it's good defence. So we'll just see that here. So he comes short, trying to hit. He comes short, trying to hit this gap here, but it's not on. And then watch him readjust. Watch this player readjust back out here. Sedbergh's always weight coming over here, and he has to readjust it to come back over here. So just watch. Readjusts, and then Sedbergh matches him perfectly, and it's not an easy try. Good tackle. Now, a try does come from this for Harrow. So he comes short. Good tackle. Now watch 5 here. 5's eyes don't move from the ball here. He hasn't scanned. He hasn't scanned if anyone's here. He hasn't scanned if anyone's out there. He just stays on the ball. Harrow come in, pick it up, go down the blind side and score. Just watch it again. Good defence. But when he gets up, he's got to scan immediately. He's got to check to his right. He's not competing. He's come off. He said, look, you compete, to his mate. But he's got to scan right. And if there's no one there, you've got to stay there because that's a big enough blindside to exploit. Obviously, he folds round, and there's the gap to exploit. So we're in the second half here, and Sedbergh are attacking in their own half. There's a little bit of a gap here, which Sedbergh tried to exploit, and he does force this outside man to turn in and tackle him. But I just want to watch the work of this man, this guy right here for Harrow. He could fill in here as just a guard, but he chooses to work round and cover his outside man there. And again, we get Harrow in this position with 3 men, Sedbergh on the outside. Sedbergh have nowhere to go. So good work from Harrow again with just the inside man just working so hard for their mate. In terms of how Sedbergh could combat this, once that 9's passed it to this winger here, he needs to drop deeper and further behind him, and everyone needs to drop deep so they can move it away. Because if that ball gets passed back to him, which it can't, because he's going to hit him. So if he was back here, the ball could just go back and then they move it away. So from this kickoff, Sedbergh have just scored. Now, 14 chases up, realises he's leaving everyone behind, and there's not a straight line at all. And it looks to me as if this player's sort of playing a sweeper role. Now, Harrow move it left. If 13's playing a sweeper role, 14 needs to come in and cover this gap. But if you watch, 14 sort of switches off, starts a little jog. The gap's getting wider between 5 and 14. 13, luckily enough, recognises this and starts to fill in. And as Harrow cut back in and tried to exploit this space. So he steps off 1, beats 5. Luckily, 13's there. Now, if 13 stays as a sweeper and doesn't fill in the gap, watch how big the gap would be right now. 1, 2. That gap is too big. So where Harrow work really hard to help out the guy on their outside shoulder and work hard as the inside man, Sedbergh aren't working as hard, leaving a big gap. So 13 has to come in and fill it. And makes the tackle. Now, after this ruck here, so once 13 makes the tackle, after this ruck, it's been moved away. It's not really a ruck, it's just an offload and a tackle. 14 switches off again. So Harrow move left again. Now look at the gap. Look at the gap again between 14 and 5, while Harrow are going this way. So 1, let's just remove that. 1, 2, and 3 are working hard, but there are 6 Harrow players over here and 3 Sedbergh defenders. Now, Personally, I think 14 should work back in that direction to help out his mates and to cover the numbers. Instead, 14 works back north to south and goes down there. So we'll just see that. Instead of covering across, 14 works back north to south. And when we get to the end of this, where the ruck happens, look how big the gap is between 14 and 5. That's massive. That's probably about 10 metres. Now, Harrow then moved this ball away. 5 has recognised that there's a big enough gap and so pulls everyone across with him to cover this gap that was left by 14 jogging north to south. The problem is now, Harrow have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players in this half of the pitch, and because the gap was so big, 5's dragged everyone across so much that now it's a 5-on-2. The 2 being 1, so it is the 5, and the 2 being here. Because the 14 went north to south, 5 had to cover the space in case they exploited it, dragged everyone across with him, and now there's a good 20 metres on this side of the pitch for 5 versus 2. And then Harrow switch it back and gain a few metres from just exploiting that space. So last bit here, 14 makes the tackle. Harrow quite clearly over the ball here. So 14 comes out the scrum. 14 makes the tackle, and Harrow over the ball here. Strong position as well, wide base, strong. Now 5 comes in but leaves, but 14 chooses to counter-ruck, which it probably isn't the right decision considering how strong Harrow is over the ball. Now, because he's committed so much to the counter-ruck and does one last big push, he falls over, leaving 5 to cover 1, 2, possibly 3 players. So they move it across. 5 needs to track, and Harrow's seen this and steps back to try and exploit again the space that 14's left here. Or actually, it's not 14, sorry, putting the blame on the wrong person. 14's fallen over. This man here should have covered inside to 5. He should be about here, while 14 gets up and joins him about there. But he hasn't done it. It seemed to me as Sedbergh were very tired this game, but he hasn't done it. Harrow recognised this. Sorry, Harrow don't recognise it. But if they had done, look how big the gap is they're strolling through. So this game ended up with Harrow winning 28-14 in the end. I think it came down to 2 things. Harrow really good on the defence, worked really hard for each other, and Sedbergh in sort of that initial attacking phase where they gave up the first try, just didn't seem to want to try and trouble a tackler or trouble the game line. And towards the end of the match, you see the massive gap Sedbergh are leaving back on the inside, which Harrow could probably choose to exploit or could have exploited better. But yeah, it just looked as if Harrow had maybe recovered from their games a bit better, and Sedbergh hadn't. But yeah, good game. 2 really good rugby schools, and Harrow move on to the cup final.